1, 2, 3, 4. All right, we're rolling. Let's jam. This is Freedom Phil. Like and subscribe. Today, what I want to talk about is a good old-fashioned EBT scam. That's right. You ever seen that business, that little small mom and pop business that's run by foreigners? It just always seems to have pretty decent prices, if not lower. Or what about that restaurant that seems to be able to undercut all the other people around them? I want to explain why this can happen, because there's between EBT and tax scams as far as bringing in relatives. It explains why their businesses can outperform your businesses. And for a second, why shouldn't you have the advantage as a person that actually lives in your country? Yeah, Freedom Phil, like, subscribe. Let's get into it. And hey, turn up the video speed. And why do I say that? Because you can watch videos faster. Why wouldn't you? All right, let's start off of it like this, man. A lot of people just don't understand. Like, you ever been to a food bank and you see someone with a really nice SUV, a really nice car? I've seen people there with Cadillacs. I've seen people there with SUVs that are only a couple of years old. Like the other day, I was looking at the value of this SUV that was right in front of me, and it was like $45,000, used. So $45,000 is a whole ass lot of food. Now, I don't have a problem with anybody going to a food bank, food pantry, whatever you want to call it, because you pay for that in your taxes. But you pay for it in your taxes as an American citizen, like in the sense that farmer gets tax deductions, you pay for that. That trucker that moves it, they get tax deductions, you pay for that. So the processor, you tax deductions, you pay for that. Plus the employees, you pay for that. And then so forth and so on, back on a truck, and then back to a DC, and then a DC on a truck, and then eventually a grocery store, and your grocery store eventually, when they were going to throw something out, before they throw it out, instead of putting it in a dumpster, which is a tiny tax deduction, tiny, they get a huge tax deduction by giving away as still quality food. This is also why it's the good thing about this is that if it wasn't for this, there'd be more of a pinch to make sure to not have food being thrown away. And it's better to have an abundance than not enough. So they get basically a huge tax write-off for the food they were going to throw away, given away as food. So you literally paid for that the whole way along. So you never feel bad about getting some food. But where it gets into a scam situation is you'll see these people, and they'll have the nicest SUVs. And by the way, if you're a parent just letting your child watch any sort of thing on the internet, like they're watching what I'm talking about, and that ends up offending you, don't be a shitty parent. Know what your kids are watching. If you don't want your kids to be watching random shit on the internet, you should actually make sure to keep an eye on your kids. Not my fault. Don't be a shitty parent. But anyhow, you see these people with these really nice SUVs, really nice cars, really nice everything, jacked up pick-em-up trucks. Like, these are nice vehicles. And mind you, any idiot can go out and buy something on credit. But you ask yourself, how can you afford this? If your truck payment or your vehicle payment is literally, let's just say, I don't know, $700 to $1,000 per month, that sounds like that could be a lot of food. But what happens with some of these cases where they'll be funneling this money into the restaurants is they'll go to the food banks to get everything need for food for the most part. And then let's say you're getting let's go with a small number. Some people get like 2,000. Let's just go with 1,000. I've heard of people getting huge amounts of EBT. Like, the scam was just horrendous. But like, you're getting $1,000 a month because you went to the food banks, you got more than enough food there, and you know how to cook. You only need to spend $100 to $200 for the rest of it. What about that extra $800? You could take that extra $800 if you have a family member, and a lot of these people do, and this is where the scam will come in. Like, say they have a restaurant. Let's say they have a small mom and pop store, and the prices are just magically reasonable, if not lower. And a lot of people chalk it up to the family working in the business, and that is true. That is lowering the cost. But if you got a bunch of different family members all living generally in the same neighborhood house or something, or in Section 8, because you will see this. Yeah, that extra $800, well, let's just say they spent $800 on food and supplies that business was going to need. But then their family member gives them $400. So the $400 basically is cash you can do whatever with. It's under the table money. You can spend on anything you fucking want. That's where you'll see drug addicts and shit in a lot of cases where it's Americans doing it. Because they've just converted this into that. And then, is there any sort of food auditor, Is there any sort of food auditor really checking out how much is going on? I mean, you got to have some numbers here and there. They're going to figure out sooner or later, if they look at, well, you had this much business, how much food was that? I've never heard about anybody having that level of audit. Like, there does come that point where, like with electricity and pot grows back in the day, people would look at where tons of electricity is being used and they'd pick it up. And that's why people would actually try to, Jimmy rig and get into the, basically hack the wiring up there to be able to get free power. But in general, when it comes to some sort of food scam, people never figure it out. Now, an example of this that I've seen off and on is you'll see these Chinese buffets that pop up, and they'll be there for a while. They'll be there for a few years, and they'll disappear in December of some year. And they're like, well, why? Why December? Because they don't want to be in the next year's tax logs. So they'll be there as long as they can run that business, claiming all those workers. So they bring in workers on a regular basis, which is perfectly legal. But then those workers come over here, work for less. But those workers then immediately get onto the system. As many things as they can get for free, one of them being the EBT. And if housing is a thing they can manage to pull off, even better, because then you can put more of the employees in that government housing. They're like, oh, they have a poor immigrant. Nah, fuck that shit. Then they funnel that money, the excess money, right back, go to the food banks, go to all this, and they funnel the excess money. And mind you, Americans generally eat too much. I know this because I've been doing intermittent fasting. And it's amazing how once you start getting used to it, you realize your lunch is a lot smaller and your dinner doesn't have to be nearly as big. Well, you come from people coming from cultures where they've done nothing but intermittent fasting as a way of life because they ain't got the food. So they come over here and you're giving them, at the food banks, such an obscene amount of food. They're like, we don't even know what we're going to do with all this. Then you give them $1,000 of EBT or whatever. And they take it, let's just say 200 of it they use to get spices and other things and creature comforts. And the other 800, they could buy food for the business and have the family member give them under the table money. On top of the fact that they're working there for a cut rate. So what does that do to the local normal restaurants or little mom and pop stores? They can't afford to compete against that. They can't afford that. You can't beat that. And I think one of the problems the way EBT system's set up, and a lot of the benefit system is, back in the day, you actually had to use food stamps. You couldn't just spend this online. Now and I got nothing against this. You can actually buy like fruit trees and seeds for growing food on EBT. I don't know if that's every state, but I remember Washington State, you could do that. And that's not a bad thing. But imagine for a second with that same type of digital system, how you could just order food, have it shipped, and just cycle through with your family. Now, is this every business? No. But it's enough immigrant businesses, and also probably some American ones that know how to do the scam as well, that it works. And it's that cycling of employees. They work here for X amount of years, as long as you get the tax pennies for them, then they go back to their home country. They go back over there they make way more money over here than they ever would have made in their home country. And then they go back and they swap them for another worker. And I guess maybe having so many years later, maybe they swap that worker back. Meanwhile, you had to pay full taxes for your employees at your business. And mind you, in some cases, it goes even worse than that, where let's just say you got someone living on Section 8 and they're doing all the scams I've basically said, except for now you do have actual illegal labor. Like, the husband that just magically, who's the husband of this child? I don't know. We're at a party. And so basically what ends up happening is that guy works under the table, doesn't pay any sort of real taxes. All he pays is a little bit of sales taxes when he buys a few things, and gas taxes. Yeah, they're all making a killing off of your American style charity. And look, I don't mind people trying to help the poor. But if we're going to help the poor, we got whole ass Americans that are homeless. We got veterans that are homeless. We got disabled people that are homeless. We got kids that don't have, we should be spending our money to better our society, our country. Not bringing in a bunch of broke ass motherfuckers that are scamming us from other countries. And by the way, I have the same kind of similar opinion about the prison system. I think if someone's got a life sentence, at some certain point, you got a few options. We'd send you to the battle dome. You could be medical tested, or you could go out. Now there ain't going to be no clean execution, but we're not going to spend $40,000 to $50,000 a year to incarcerate a motherfucker. Meanwhile we got kids that imagine for a second how many people with the modern technology we have today, as far as learning from home, college education at home as much as possible, and then just do the physical things at the facilities. Imagine how many people we could have educated. Not just colleges, but plumbers, electricians, all this stuff. Imagine how many people we could have actually educated for what we waste on foreigners on EBT and prisoners that, shit, they've been in prison their whole life. What the fuck? After they've run out of their appeals, now it's to the battle dome, baby. Or maybe you're going to be an experiment for Pfizer or some shit. I don't know. All I'm saying is our country is a fucking scam. And the part is, the reason that most people don't even acknowledge it is, let's just be honest. Despite how much your government is ripping you off, at the end of the day, most of you are comfortable. Your wife maybe works a part-time job, if she works at all. The husband works his full-time gig. The kids go to school. Everything goes as it normally does, planned. You come home, you drink a beer or two. Dinner's ready. You kiss your wife. You love your kids. You love your family. You watch a movie or TV. And then you have a little sexy time, and you repeat process. Because you're not actually seeing the rot, the corruption, and it doesn't affect you. Even if you knew about it, you wouldn't even look. You would never even think about these things. But you come down to the gutter, come down to the trenches sometime, and you start seeing how this shit works. Just like the other day, man, a few weeks ago, that lady, she got a full-ass huge birthday cake. Big one, you know, the rectangle one. And she immediately tries to pawn it in the food bank line. By the way, the food bank took the cake back. They're like, yeah, you ain't, no. She's like, I can't eat this. I got diabetes. Why the hell did you take it? I'm just telling you. It's all a scam. And arguably, if we made this system to where, like, I agree with the idea of a negative tax. You know, like, hey, you get this much deduction. You got to work. You can work and make up to this and you won't pay a cent. At least you get some GDP out of people. You get some work out of people. But yeah, I'm telling you, our system was made to be scammed. And that's why you see so many foreigners and then just usual welfare hogs scamming the system. It's made to be scammed. Peace.